As the war progressed, many foreign leaders assumed that America's innovations would be too slow to make a difference. They believed that logistical challenges, bureaucracy, and the sheer scale of production would hold the country back. But what they didn't see was the coordination happening behind the scenes. Factories were running day and night, producing weapons, vehicles, and supplies at unprecedented speed. Engineers and designers worked hand in hand with the military to adapt technology quickly for battlefield needs. Meanwhile, analysts abroad assumed the American people were too distracted by domestic concerns, and that debates in Congress would slow critical decisions. They underestimated the ability of a democratic system to act decisively when preparation was already in place. From advanced aircraft to tanks and transport fleets, every piece of technology and every shipment was carefully planned to arrive exactly when it was needed. Rivals, who had mocked the United States for being slow and hesitant, were shocked as production and innovation outpaced their expectations. What looked chaotic to the outside world was actually an organized system of efficiency, one that combined human skill, industrial power, and strategic foresight. And as these efforts came together, it became clear that underestimating America was a grave mistake. A mistake that would have lasting consequences for the global balance of power. As the war progressed, many foreign leaders were convinced that America's innovations would arrive too late to matter. They believed the vast distances, bureaucracy, and the sheer size of the country would slow every critical decision. What they failed to realize was the level of coordination happening behind the scenes. Factories were running day and night, churning out tanks, planes, ships, and all the supplies needed for the battlefield. Engineers were not just designing technology, they were rapidly adapting it for real-world combat, often faster than the enemy could anticipate. Even the smallest improvements in machinery or transport could be implemented almost immediately, because production systems had been carefully planned to handle rapid changes. Analysts abroad assumed Americans would struggle with politics, public opinion, or domestic debates. They didn't see that the very structure of democracy allowed for both discussion and decisive action, letting strategy unfold quietly while the world watched. Supply lines were meticulously organized, moving goods from ports to the front lines with precision. And innovations like radar, precision bombing, and long-range communications gave American forces an edge invisible to outsiders. Rivals laughed at the slow United States, expecting delays, mistakes, and confusion. Instead, they witnessed efficiency, adaptability, and relentless production. Every shipment, every plan, every piece of technology was part of a coordinated system that others underestimated. A system that would ultimately turn disbelief into shock on the battlefield. And as factories roared, engines hummed, and soldiers trained, one lesson became clear. Underestimating America wasn't just a mistake, it was a fatal misjudgment. One of the most surprising ways America shocked the world was through innovation. Foreign leaders assumed the United States would lag behind in technology, thinking that production and invention were slow and cumbersome. But what they didn't see was how quickly ideas turned into action. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, often side by side with the military, creating solutions that could be deployed almost immediately. Radar systems, advanced aircraft, and long-range communication tools were developed, tested, and implemented faster than anyone expected. Even in the midst of war, factories adapted to produce new designs, with workers learning new techniques in real time. Rivals assumed that America's size and bureaucracy would cause delays. They didn't understand the scale of organization and foresight behind every operation. Every shipment, every blueprint, every improvement added to a growing advantage. An invisible strength that no one could fully measure from the outside. By the time the world realized what was happening, American forces had already turned innovation into battlefield success, proving once again that underestimation could be their greatest mistake. And this pattern, repeated across multiple fronts, showed a consistent truth. America's hidden capacity, patience, and adaptability were forces rivals simply could not anticipate. Logistics and transportation were another area where America quietly outpaced its rivals. Enemy leaders assumed that moving troops, weapons, and supplies across a continent would be slow and cumbersome. They didn't realize the precision and scale of the American system. Railways, ports, and highways were coordinated to deliver exactly what was needed when it was needed. Trucks, trains, and ships moved in perfect synchrony, carrying tanks, artillery, and essential supplies to the front lines without delay. Even unexpected challenges, damaged infrastructure, weather, or enemy action were met with contingency plans that had been prepared in advance. Rivals often focused on visible weaknesses, missing the careful planning behind the scenes. This seamless coordination allowed American forces to strike quickly, adapt to changing situations, and maintain momentum, proving once again that appearances could be deceiving. By the end of each operation, the world realized that underestimating America's logistics was a costly mistake, one that continually turned out into decisive advantage on multiple fronts. Weapons development and military production became one of America's most underestimated strengths during the war. Many foreign leaders assumed that designing, testing, and producing advanced tanks, aircraft, and artillery would be slow and inefficient. They thought bureaucratic delays and the scale of production would prevent the United States from ever acting quickly. What they didn't realize was the incredible organization behind American factories. Production lines were not static. They adapted in real time to incorporate new designs, improved technologies, and battlefield lessons. Engineers, mechanics, and workers collaborated seamlessly, turning innovations into deployable equipment faster than anyone abroad could imagine. Even small technological improvements, reinforced armor, better targeting systems, or faster engines, were implemented almost immediately, giving troops a tactical advantage that caught enemies off guard. Rivals believed they had time to analyze, plan, and counter America's moves. In reality, every new shipment, every prototype, and every upgraded weapon arrived ahead of schedule, creating a growing edge that compounded over time. From the skies to the seas, from the battlefield to supply lines, American forces were equipped in ways that rival nations could not anticipate. By the time enemies realized the scale of production and innovation, it was often too late. The momentum had already shifted. The lesson was clear. Underestimating American industrial and military power was not just a mistake. It was a repeated, costly error. And this hidden advantage, invisible at first glance, would continue to define the course of the war, showing again that what the world saw on the surface often hid the true depth of American strength. Strategic planning and battlefield adaptation were another area where America quietly outpaced its rivals. Many foreign leaders assumed that debates in Congress, public opinion, and the sheer size of the nation would slow critical decisions, leaving the United States vulnerable. What they didn't see was the meticulous preparation that went on behind the scenes. Military leaders coordinated closely with engineers, scientists, and logistics experts, ensuring that every operation had backup plans, contingency strategies, and rapid response measures. Troop movements, supply shipments, and technological deployment were all synchronized with precision, allowing American forces to respond quickly to unexpected challenges on multiple fronts. Rivals often focused on visible hesitation, misinterpreting it as weakness. In reality, it was patience, the quiet execution of well-thought-out plans that unfolded at exactly the right moment. Even when mistakes or unforeseen obstacles occurred, the systems in place allowed the United States to adapt seamlessly, turning potential setbacks into opportunities for strategic advantage. By the end of each campaign, the pattern became unmistakable. America's ability to plan, adapt, and execute efficiently repeatedly caught enemies off guard, proving once again that underestimation was a costly error. Diplomacy and behind-the-scenes alliances were another way America quietly outmaneuvered the world. Many foreign leaders assumed that the United States, focused on domestic concerns and political debates, would struggle to form effective international partnerships. They believed that internal disagreements would slow decisions and limit America's influence abroad. But what they didn't see was the careful planning, coordination, and foresight happening behind closed doors. American diplomats, strategists, and advisors were constantly building relationships, negotiating treaties, and creating channels of influence that rivals often overlooked. Secret meetings, intelligence sharing, and subtle negotiations ensured that America could project power globally without appearing aggressive or overbearing. Alliances were formed quietly, sometimes years before crises even emerged. so that when the moment came, America could act decisively while the world was still guessing. Rivals focused on what they could see: political debates, media headlines, public disagreements. Assuming the United States was slow, hesitant, or indecisive. They didn't realize that this apparent chaos was masking an intricate, efficient system of strategy and preparation. Every negotiation, every treaty, every diplomatic effort added to America's unseen advantage, creating a network of influence that could be mobilized at a moment's notice. By the time foreign powers recognized the extent of these alliances, it was often too late to counter them effectively. Once again, history proved the same lesson. Underestimating the United States was not just an oversight. It was a strategic miscalculation with consequences that rippled across the globe. And through diplomacy, coordination, and quiet preparation, America turned the doubts of its rivals into a powerful, invisible advantage that shaped the course of the war. Intelligence and espionage became another hidden weapon in America's arsenal. Many foreign powers assumed that the United States relied solely on brute force and visible military might. They underestimated the quiet networks of spies, codebreakers, and analysts who worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Information gathered from all corners of the globe allowed American leaders to anticipate moves, prepare contingencies, and make decisions with precision that rivals couldn't match. Secret communications, intercepted messages, and careful analysis of enemy plans provided an invisible edge. One that often turned uncertainty into opportunity. Rivals focused on the obvious: armies, factories, and public statements, while missing the invisible intelligence that guided American strategy. Every decoded message, every reconnaissance report, every piece of information collected quietly contributed to the bigger picture, allowing the United States to strike decisively when needed. By the time enemies realized how much they had been misjudged, it was already too late to adjust, too late to counter, too late to anticipate the next move. This hidden network of knowledge and strategy reinforced a recurring truth. Underestimating America was not just risky, it was dangerous. Because the real strength often lies in what the world cannot immediately see. The battles themselves revealed America's hidden strengths in ways that shocked rivals. Commanders abroad assumed that American forces would be slow, uncoordinated, or hesitant under pressure. They expected delays, mistakes, and confusion in critical moments. But on the ground, American troops were well prepared, disciplined, and adaptable. Every maneuver had been practiced, every supply line secured, and every contingency considered. From large-scale operations to smaller skirmishes, the United States consistently demonstrated an ability to respond quickly and effectively, turning moments of uncertainty into decisive advantage. Rivals often misread hesitation for weakness, only to discover that every pause was calculated, every action measured, and every strategy backed by planning and resources they had overlooked. Even unexpected obstacles, weather, terrain, or enemy interference, were met with ingenuity and rapid adaptation. American forces improvised while maintaining coordination, turning potential setbacks into victories that caught observers completely off guard. By the end of each engagement, it became undeniable. The world had repeatedly misjudged the United States, underestimating the combination of preparation, adaptability, and quiet determination that defined American military power. Technological innovation continued to give America an invisible edge over its rivals. From advanced aircraft to precision weaponry, from radar systems to secure communications, the United States continually introduced tools and strategies that others had not anticipated. Foreign leaders assumed that technology would take years to develop and implement, underestimating the speed and adaptability of American engineers and scientists. Factories and laboratories worked in tandem with the military, rapidly turning ideas into operational systems that could be deployed on the battlefield or in support roles. Even small innovations improved targeting, stronger armor, faster engines, were integrated quickly, creating a steady accumulation of advantages that rivals struggled to comprehend. While enemies focused on visible military movements, they often missed the silent, pervasive improvements happening behind the lines. Each technological leap added layers of strategic depth, giving the United States the ability to act decisively while the world was still reacting. By combining innovation with planning, logistics, and training, America continually turned out into a tangible, operational advantage, proving once again that underestimation could be fatal for any adversary. Proxy wars and unexpected crises tested America's strength in ways that rivals never anticipated. Many foreign leaders assumed that distant conflicts, limited resources, or political pressures would slow the United States response. They thought America would hesitate, delay action, or fail to adapt to rapidly changing situations. But American forces had learned from experience. Preparation, planning, and adaptability were the keys to success. Troops were ready, supplies were organized, and strategies could shift on the fly, allowing the United States to project power even in distant or unexpected conflicts. Rivals watched closely, expecting mistakes or delays, only to be surprised again and again. Operations were executed with precision, combining local knowledge, technological advantages, and rapid communication. Every proxy war, every crisis, every unexpected challenge reinforced a pattern. America could respond effectively, often faster than anyone had predicted, turning situations that seemed uncertain into clear demonstrations of strategic advantage. By the time the world realized what had happened, it was too late. American forces had already established control, influence, and momentum, proving once more that underestimating the United States was a critical misjudgment. Cultural influence and soft power were additional ways America quietly dominated on the global stage. Many foreign leaders assumed that military strength and industrial output were the only measures of power, overlooking how culture, media, and ideology could shape perception and influence worldwide. American music, films, literature, and technological products spread rapidly, shaping attitudes, preferences, and loyalties in countries far beyond its borders. Rivals assumed that such influence was secondary, a soft and insignificant tool. They underestimated how ideas, values, and entertainment could reinforce political and strategic objectives, creating an invisible network of support that could be mobilized when needed. From movies depicting heroic narratives to technology that revolutionized daily life, American culture became a silent force multiplier, building familiarity, admiration, and alignment with U.S. interests. Even in regions where military or political access was limited, cultural influence allowed the United States to maintain presence, credibility, and indirect control. By the end of the decade, it was clear. Soft power was just as decisive as hard power in shaping outcomes and surprising rivals, reinforcing the lesson that underestimating America in any dimension was a dangerous mistake. As the decades progressed, the pattern became unmistakable. The world repeatedly misjudged America. Leaders abroad assumed delays, hesitation, or inefficiency in every major operation, expecting the United States to falter under pressure or political complexity. But time and again, America proved them wrong. Planning, preparation, and hidden systems of coordination allowed rapid response in ways that rivals simply could not anticipate. Every front, every operation, and every challenge revealed the same truth. Strength was not always visible on the surface. It was hidden in factories, logistics networks, research labs, and strategic planning rooms. Rivals who focused solely on appearances missed the real advantage: the ability to act decisively, adapt quickly, and leverage both innovation and intelligence simultaneously. Even when obstacles seemed insurmountable, whether terrain, political pressure, or unexpected enemy action, American forces consistently found solutions that turned setbacks into advantages. And it wasn't just the military. Diplomatic foresight, cultural influence, technological innovation, and economic might all combine to create an invisible yet overwhelming power. By the time observers realized what had been happening, the advantage was already secured, the outcome shaped, and the lesson clear. Underestimating America had consistently led to costly miscalculations and strategic failure. This recurring pattern of hidden strength, quiet preparation, and decisive action became the defining characteristic of American power, showing the world that true influence is often invisible until it's too late to counter. As we reach the final chapters of this story, it becomes clear just how often the world misjudged America. Leaders abroad consistently assumed that the United States would be slow to respond, hesitant in decision-making, or unable to adapt to rapidly changing circumstances. They underestimated not only the scale of America's industrial and technological capacity, but also the ingenuity, discipline, and coordination that worked quietly behind the scenes. Factories operated day and night, producing weapons, vehicles, and supplies at a speed that rivals thought impossible. Engineers and military strategists worked hand in hand to adapt technology for real battlefield conditions almost instantly. Innovations in aircraft, naval vessels, communication systems, and weaponry were implemented faster than any foreign power could anticipate. Logistics networks moved with a precision that seemed invisible from the outside. Troops, equipment, and critical supplies reached exactly where they were needed, even when unexpected obstacles arose. Rivals assumed delays, but every challenge was met with contingency plans prepared well in advance. What appeared to be hesitation was actually careful execution. On the intelligence front, America quietly built networks of spies, code breakers, and analysts who provided critical insight into enemy plans and intentions. Secret information allowed leaders to anticipate moves, prepare strategic responses, and act decisively while others were still guessing. Rivals focused on what they could see: armies, factories, and public headlines, and completely missed the hidden machinery of strategy and information. Diplomacy and soft power added yet another layer of influence. While foreign leaders thought cultural exports like movies, music, and literature were trivial, America leveraged them as tools to shape perception and build alignment around the globe. This invisible power reinforced alliances, promoted stability, and created goodwill in ways that military might alone could not. Throughout multiple conflicts, proxy wars, technological races, and political crises, America repeatedly demonstrated that underestimation was a mistake. Opponents misread hesitation as weakness, bureaucracy as inefficiency, and domestic debates as indecision. But behind the surface, preparation, innovation, strategy, and coordination quietly ensured success. By the end of each chapter, the results spoke for themselves. America acted faster, adapted better, and achieved objectives more effectively than anyone predicted. Rivals learned, often too late, that the real strength lay not in visible power alone, but in the careful planning, hidden coordination, and relentless drive that defined the United States. The lesson is clear for all who study history. Appearances can be deceiving. Strength is not always obvious, and underestimating a nation capable of combining industrial might, technological innovation, strategic foresight, and cultural influence is a grave error. From factories to front lines, from laboratories to diplomatic tables, from culture to intelligence networks, America repeatedly turned skepticism into shock. Rivals who doubted, mocked, or dismissed the country were confronted with a force that was far more capable, agile, and prepared than they could have imagined. And as we reflect on this story, one thing becomes undeniable. The United States has repeatedly proven that true power often works in silence, unseen until it's too late to counter. Underestimation is not just a misjudgment, it is a historical mistake that echoes through every conflict, every crisis, and every challenge. America's hidden strength, combined with foresight, adaptability, and relentless preparation created a legacy of victories, surprises, and lessons the world will never forget. This is the story of a nation consistently underestimated, yet consistently triumphant, a reminder that what is hidden, when executed with precision and vision, can change the course of history. As we conclude this story, one final truth stands out. History is often written by what people see, not what they fail to notice. Throughout decades of conflict, crisis, and global competition, the United States was repeatedly underestimated. Rivals assumed delays, mismanagement, hesitation, and inefficiency. They saw politics, bureaucracy, and domestic debates and mistook them for weakness. But what they could not see were the hidden systems of preparation, strategy, and coordination that operated tirelessly behind the scenes. Factories produced weapons, vehicles, and supplies at unprecedented speed. Engineers turned ideas into action, adapting technology faster than anyone anticipated. Logistics networks moved troops and materials with precision. Intelligence and espionage provided critical insight, while diplomacy and cultural influence quietly shaped alliances across the globe. Every challenge, from battlefield obstacles to political crises, revealed the same pattern. America responded faster, adapted better, and achieved objectives more effectively than expected. Rivals were left scrambling, realizing too late that underestimating the United States was not a minor error. It was a strategic miscalculation with real consequences. The lesson is simple. True strength is not always visible on the surface. It lives in preparation, innovation, adaptability, and foresight. It thrives in coordination, in planning, and in the ability to act decisively when the moment arrives. And so, the legacy of being consistently underestimated remains a defining feature of American power. A nation that turns skepticism into opportunity, hesitation into precision, and doubt into decisive advantage. As we look back, the message is clear for both historians and leaders. Never underestimate a nation that combines vision, resilience, and hidden strength. America's story is a testament to the fact that what is unseen can be far more powerful than what is immediately visible. And in that quiet, relentless preparation lies a force that has repeatedly shaped the course of history, proving again and again that the world's misjudgments are America's opportunities. This is Misjudged America, a nation underestimated yet unstoppable, whose hidden strength continues to leave a mark on the world.